Welcome to the final day of Magic and Religion. Sorry, I'm a little parched. I hope you've enjoyed the class. I sure have enjoyed teaching it and hearing from all of you. And so today I'd like to offer some concluding arguments on Alex Marr and on my conclusion for the class. So one of the things I wanted to put out in the third part of the class is magic can function as self-realization and self-exploration. Now, there's a long tradition of this, people taking up magical practices, whether they be transcendental or pragmatic, and using them in order to get a greater sense of themselves. I mean, this is definitely the case with the high magic Tantra, um, Western occultism in general, and Christian mysticism. Magic now, though, when you talk to people that practice magic who consider themselves witches or ceremonial magicians or whatever they consider themselves, when they describe magic, they generally use it they usually describe using the language of self-exploration and even self-help, whatever self-help is. That's a thing I've been thinking about lately is what is self-help and what is a book that it supposedly allows them to read it in order to become a better person through putting it into practice. All right, so when we're dealing with magic, I've set out these terms, pragmatic and transcendental. Transcendental are the rituals that one uses to maintain society, to have lifestyle transitions, to generally worship, and pragmatic are these rituals that are used with a specific result. Now, in Alex Marr, you see she gets to a certain point where she needs a binding ritual because she's in a crisis, because she's having a problem with a relationship she's having with, what's his name, Sean. And so Morpheus, when she writes, Alex writes to Morpheus, and Morpheus writes back and says, well, here's 3 rituals. They're all considered binding rituals. And actually, often when you hear people talk about pragmatic ritual in any way, and especially in a neo-pagan world, they're generally using binding rituals. You remember that there's these binding rituals that can be found in Greek and Roman religion that are called defixions, or however you say that one. So there's a manipulation of a tongue. So she goes and gets a giant, Morpheus gives her 3 rituals. One is the tongue. So it's a manipulation of a cow's tongue that is bound up probably with the name of the person within the cow's tongue. It's supposed to bind their very tongue and keep them from speaking. The puppet, so puppet, but with an O, puppet. So that's kind of like a voodoo doll sort of thing. And then also, tells her that she needs to do sort of candle burning rituals and ritual cleansing, ritual bathing magic based on whatever she's doing. So Marr, being Alex Marr, starts to do the ritual and then wimps out. This is a theme with her. She's like, I'm going to get initiated. No, I'm not. I'm going to hang out with these people in the Midwest. No, I'm not. I'm going to hang out all the time with Morpheus. Maybe not. I'm going to hang out with the OTO, or maybe not. I mean, she does, we see at the end, does take the Minerval initiation, and that's supposed to be secret, and she gives away the goods. So maybe the crows will eat her eyes and her flesh be devoured by dogs for writing about the actual ritual, even though she doesn't reveal the specific magical word that is told and the sort of sign, what they call the signs and the grips. So these are ritual hand gestures and also a ritualized handshake. This is actually based on Freemasonry, but I'm not going to go into that because it's secret. Secrecy. It's very important. Secrecy binds people together. Secrecy creates fraternality. All right, so she fluctuates. And like I said, I mean, is she a spiritual tourist? Is she a spiritual seeker? I mean, one thing we can be sure of is that she doesn't commit to anything. So what I was thinking about when I was reading this again is I thought, is there sort of a pull toward magic, folks that just don't feel fulfilled by religion? Is really Marr's quest, and her quest seems to be one for certainty and belief that she doesn't find in the religions that she grew up in? Is that because we're always looking for certainty? And why would we turn to magic? I'm confused throughout the book why she thinks she's going to somehow find belief and certainty based on based on performing magic, which magic is inherently uncertain. The results are never clear. So I don't quite understand why she thinks she's going to find certainty and belief. However, I do think that she is very keen on knowing that she's writing a darn book. So you can see in all of her interactions with these people that she's always kind of pulling information out, and you can almost see her, if you imagine her in these situations, sort of trying to structure her engagement with folks in order to generate data for her book. Now, in a way, when I think about this, I think about a standard principle, which is like attracts like. So Mar is attracted, well, Mar goes into these groups, and we'll see that, amongst the Thelemites, they're all kind of counterculture, wearing black. I mean, they are in New Orleans, wearing a lot of black, being kind of heavy metal, kind of being dark counterculture figures. The people in California are all kind of like Renaissance festival type people, and they all seem really similar. And then, even despite the oddities of the New England witches and their eccentricities, they seem to be cut from the same cloth. I mean, I think we see this everywhere. Like attracts like. So just as if you go to a suburban church, you're going to see a lot of people, who are very similar. In the same way, in these groups, people are very similar. I don't know. What are they like? Well, I don't know. They're a bit counterculture. They're LGBT friendly. They're somewhat lefty for the most part. It's, But my question is, she goes to New Orleans, she goes to New England, she goes to California, but she's from New York. New York has a big OTO lodge, Tahuti lodges out there. New York has tons of pagan groups all over the place. So why did she choose these people to interact with? I don't know how she chose the communities, other than that I think she made friendships, and she let those friendships dictate where she went. But she could have studied all of these groups in New York City. I mean, they're all right there from where she's from. So why did she have to go so far away? We do notice that with these groups, though, it's more than it's not more than a religion. It's what religion does. I mean, this is the way people build little families. This is the way people build communities. And what I think is actually really interesting about this book that she doesn't describe very clearly is just the types of communities, the types of friendships that these people have in these occult groups. In fact, she says at one point, she's like, I don't know, these fairies are very cultish. I'm like, but I don't know what she means by cultish. I mean, they do have charismatic personalities such as Morgan and Karina, but those people aren't charismatic leaders. They're teachers, but they're not, absolute gurus. And the OTO does not have any real charismatic leaders. They have a king of a country. So there's Sabazius X or Sabazius X, who's the holy king of the United States. She mentions him a couple times, but he's not a charismatic leader. He's just the guy who lays out discipline, sets out rituals, and makes decisions. I mean, these aren't the type of gurus like you would see in, like everyone's seen that documentary Wild Wild Country about Rajneesh Osho. So in fact, she actually writes on page 261, conviction is the root of magic. I don't know what that means. What is that conviction? I mean, does it only work if you can really tell that it's working? Or does it only work if you believe? Is that what she's getting at? It's hard to say. So we read on page 261, I envy that level of focus, that certainty. I worry that I may be as much of a foggy-headed seeker as I was when I first pulled up to Morpheus's trailer home 5 years ago. I've joined in sabbats at Stone City. I've taken an oath on a sword in front of hundreds of pagans. I've eaten and drank the sacraments of Aleister Crowley's church. I've helped Morpheus give offerings to the Morrigan, whiskey, and my own breath. I've trained with Karina, circled with her coven, only to decide that hers were not my people. And now, with Alombros, not only am I unsure what lies on the other side of these 3 days and nights, but it's unclear to me whether or not there is something to uncover there at all. I don't understand what she's doing. Why is she saying this? I mean, I think she's appealing to her greater audience, but what's she really getting at? I'm unclear. And also the Minerval initiation usually does not have 3 days wandering in a swamp. I know in New Mexico, they do like hike for, I think, and hike and camp, I think, for 2 days before the initiation. But in most of them, you just show up and you do the initiation. So that's added. Okay. So, I mean, the other thing I wonder is magic is almost always considered prohibited. It's almost always illegal. If you look into the earliest texts in Sanskrit about magic and legal texts, magic, specifically aggressive magic, is illegal. When you look at magical texts and grimoires in Europe, they're illegal. And in fact, it was only like 1957 that in Europe they lifted an archaic law that said that magic and witchery was illegal. So magic, it does have a sense of this outlawness and this countercultureness. So I guess it's not surprising that the types of social groups are into it. But I guess this also begs the question of, what is the supernatural? There's a contemporary writer named Jeffrey Kripal, who I quite like. I've been reading a lot of his stuff lately. He's a historian of religion. And he actually puts a space, super and natural. The supernatural is natural. It is of this world. It's just above it and different than it. So, Bigfoots are the supernatural, right? Well, no, they're actually, Bigfoots are normal in the natural world. They're just somehow fantastic. Aliens, are they real? Aren't they? It doesn't matter. They're natural phenomenon that we imbue with a superness that we tend to think is higher. But, the experience of seeing lights in the sky can be traced back to the book of Ezekiel when he sees wheels upon wheels. So people have been seeing wheels in the sky since as long as people have been able to look at the sky. So I think that magic, on the other hand, in itself is a natural thing, something natural that people do, but it is imbued with a sense of height and wonder. So magic is the supernatural, not the supernatural. It's the supernatural. It's the common natural world, except it's somehow magnificent. It's just like the real world, except it's different. It's just like what is common, but it's uncommon. So in the aftermath of this book, I keep wondering what happened to these people that she interviews. I mean, I know Alumbris is still around. I was just reading a list the other day that a friend of mine wrote of the 25 most important living pagans right now, and this woman Morpheus is on there. She's a big deal. She's gained notoriety in the last 5 years or so in the fairy tradition. But how do these people react to Alex Marr? I know the Carino woman has been very public about how she does not care for the way Alex Marr depicted her. And lots of pagans have read this book and said, you make us all look like jerks and weirdos. They're a little weird, whatever. I can't imagine that Alex Marr would be welcome at any OTO function because of her reporting the secrets of the ritual of Minerval. And, that's not, I don't know how fair that is, because there is a book by Francis King called The Secret Rituals of the OTO that describes all 10 ritual initiations in detail. Now, supposedly they're not exact. I read it about 10 years ago and probably forgot everything in it. But you can go out and read what these rituals are. But to actively tell the secrets when you vowed not to, I'm sure she's a journalist. Nobody knew she's a journalist. I mean, I've heard around the OTO world that, especially because there's this TV show out called Strange Angel about Jack Parsons, who was the very important founder of modern American rocketry, but was also a Thelemite who studied with Aleister Crowley, in fact. So I've heard in the OTO circles that they're expecting lots of people to see the TV show and think, wow, what's this stuff? What's the Gnostic Mass? What's this OTO thing? What is that? So they're anticipating more and more sort of journalists and researchers and whatnot to show up, and they're pretty clear about, get to know people before you talk to them too much. Make sure they're not, writing an expose. So I mean, I don't know. She's pissed in the pool, so she's not going to be welcome to swim again. Why does she choose to reveal the details of the initiation? She could have just talked about wandering around the swamp and then been very brief and not reveal these details. And in fact, I mean, I got into trouble one time at an OTO function because I revealed the identity of a person who performed as the Saladin in a just casual conversation with OTO folks, and they're like, don't you do that. It's supposed to be secret. So even the fact that she says that Josh functioned as the Saladin, that in and of itself is revealing another secret. I mean, why does she feel so compelled to tell these secrets? Now, on the other hand, I want to know stuff, so I'm not going to stop reading it. But on the other hand, as I read it, I'm like, don't tell too much. And that makes me wonder, because I don't really hang out with fairies, is, she talks about the sexual consecration of the orgasm. That is the essential thing that enlivens the fairy initiation. I'm like, is that secret stuff? I bet it probably is. So I bet the fairies are probably pretty darn pissed off at her as well. It makes you ask, if you're going to write a journalistic piece about a secret society and you've hung out and pretended to be an insider, is it fair for you to write about the stuff that the insiders tell you? That's the problem of the secret and disclosure of the secret, which is difficult in all religious stuff. So, in conclusion, what is magic? Now, I've defined magic as pragmatic ritual technology. But magic is more than that, I think. I mean, as we've seen here, and I think as we've looked at throughout the course, we see that magic provides a place for people. It allows people to hang out. So magical secret societies become a little family. In the modern world, socially, it provides a world for misfits where they can be happy and they can have their own little family. It legitimates the illegitimate. It makes new families for those that don't have families or those who need another family. Also, I mean, there's a sense of transgression. You're doing stuff you're not supposed to do. But there's also tradition that people have done this for a long period of time. So you're transgressing against social norms to some degree, but you're also doing traditional forms of practice that have been handed down from magician to magician to magician down the lineage. At the end of the day, I stand by Hans-Dieter Betz, who did the translation of the Greek magical papyri. And did you notice that our kooky little necromancer was actually using the Greek magical papyri in translation to do his necromantic work? You can get a copy of it. I got a copy of it on my shelf over there. It's a fantastic little book. It's kind of similar to my dissertation in many ways. So Hans-Dieter Betz writes that, and I'm paraphrasing here and giving my own interpretation, but it's inspired by Betz, and it's inspired by some writings by Ludwig Wittgenstein again, to come to this conclusion that magic acts out a wish. You have a desire. You act out that desire. But what is the end result? By acting out that desire, you're gaining freedom from the pains of frustration. So how does magic work? And it does work. I mean, sometimes people will say, I do this magic ritual, I want this to happen. It happened. I conjured up this being, I felt a tingling on my back, I saw a weird light. Yeah, something happened. But there's something very, very basic about magic that I think is the key. And this is a key I want you to take from this class. Magic does work. Because when you are completely frustrated and you've done everything you can, you're at your wit's end, you're at your absolute conclusion. There's no way to fulfill the pains of frustration. You can do magic. You can burn a candle. You can write your ex-girlfriend or boyfriend's name on a piece of paper and then burn it. You can do these things. And they do give you a sense of catharsis. You're given a sense of you're acting it out and you feel a little bit better. You feel better because you're doing something. Because magic takes people that are suffering incredible frustrations and they let them act out that wish. And in that moment, they feel better. Whether the magic ritual results happen or not, you're free from the pain of frustration. When you're at your wit's end, there's one more thing you can do. And you can do magic. And once that ritual is done, you go, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But at least I was able to do something. So what is magic? It is a way to free yourself from frustration. Why study magic? As we've gone from ancient, on a long ride, from ancient Greece to medieval India to 20th century Africa to late 20th century France to late 20th century, or to the 21st century of the United States. We're reading Alex Barr, to Aleister Crowley stuff in the 20th century. All of this shows us that we can use magic Well, not that we can use magic, but we can think about magic. And by thinking about magic, we get to learn languages, new vocabularies, cultural idioms, cultural conventions, the social world. I've learned more about medieval magic and the social world of medieval India by reading magic than anything else I've ever read. I mean, except for maybe the legal texts. So you read legal texts and you can see, like, don't do this. That means people are doing that. So when you're reading magic, you get to see like, oh yeah, there's a lot of tension between husbands and wives and brothers and folks and armies and battle. Then how do they deal? And then the other thing is you get to learn about the natural world because you get to read about all the materials people we used in magic. And look at the societies. We've learned so much about Greek society with Eros and Philia, about the magic of medieval India and the tensions between people and the different materials they've used. We've seen a beautiful system about witchcraft amongst the Azandi that is really social, pro-social. And then amongst the French, we see that witchcraft can also be completely antisocial. And then my theory that, in fact, all this 19th and 20th century occultism with mesmerism and magnetism and the idea that there are constant swirling energies around that one can become imbalanced or balanced with and then can deploy them outward, we can see that these sort of heady ideas get filtered into not only the interpretations by the anthropologist, but by the people, by these rural, supposedly uneducated folks. They have these sophisticated occult visions. And then, heck, we learn a lot about the world of the United States by seeing these sort of tiny little microcosms that Alex Marr describes. And we get to witness the journey of an unbelieving New Yorker traveling around, the extremes. I mean, from New Orleans to the Bay Area to New England, these extreme areas with these sort of extreme people. And we realize that, while these are extreme folks in Alex Marr's text, there's a lot more common people. I bet more neo-pagans than you realize. And we get to see about how all of these people in the United States are trying to find ways to make meaning, to try to find ways to make sense of themselves, try to grapple with religions that they were born into, and then becoming innovators in and of themselves. And that's the thing why I like these extreme cases, and why I like extreme people, actually, in my life, is I like to see the way that they're trying to change the world and change themselves for the better. I like that. So maybe what's magic really about these days? Self-improvement, self-expression, self-exploration. So I hope you'll continue to read about magic and think about magic. And I hope you take away from the class a whole bunch of new skills. You're definitely multidisciplinary. You've gone from the classics to Indology to anthropology to journalism. We've gotten into it. I hope you enjoyed the ride. It's been great for me. It's been my pleasure. Keep in touch if there's anything I can ever do for you. And I'll say now, as I say at the end of every class, whatever you do, love harder. Thanks.